The plane was only in the air for 25 seconds when the pilots noticed strange noises and vibrations. They tried several ways to improve the situation, but nothing worked. The engine kept failing, and after a little more than a minute of flight, both engines failed. The right engine failed first, followed by the left engine 2 seconds later. The pilots decided to return to the airport, but their efforts to restart the engine were unsuccessful. In a last-ditch effort to improve the situation, the flight crew decided to tilt the plane and then level it off. This would help them gain the speed they needed to glide. However, the pilots soon realized that they wouldn't make it to the airport. Before we go into this story, don't forget to click the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Now you'll be the first to know about our new releases. Everything seemed normal that morning before the flight. The standard pre-flight procedures were followed and the weather was good. The crew consisted of experienced pilots, including a 44-year-old commander from Denmark with over 8,000 flight hours and a 34-year-old pilot from Sweden with 3,000 hours. So, what could have gone wrong? The plane was almost brand new, a McDonnell Douglas MD-81 that had made its maiden flight on March 16, 1991. It had only been in service for 9 months and was carrying 122 passengers and 7 crew members. The flight, Scandinavian Airlines Flight 751, was scheduled to fly from Stockholm to Warsaw, with a stopover in Copenhagen. The plane took off from Stockholm as scheduled at 8:47 a.m. local time. By then, however, the passengers were already doomed due to a series of unfortunate events that had occurred the night before. The plane arrived at Stockholm Airport from Zurich at 10:09 p.m. the previous night and spent the night at the gate. It was cold, about 0 degrees Celsius, and the situation was made worse by the nearly 3,000 tons of cooled fuel still in the wings. The fuel was very cold because the plane had been flying at cruising altitude, where temperatures outside the cabin ranged from -52 to -62 degrees Celsius. The flight from Zurich lasted 1 hour and 40 minutes. Shortly after midnight, a flight engineer and a technician came to check the plane. The technician had to clean the slush from the landing gear before he could inspect it. At around 2 a.m., as the technician was about to leave, he noticed some ice on the top of the wings. By morning, the situation had become even more serious with a layer of transparent, almost invisible ice on the wings. The plane was scheduled to leave the gate at 9:30 a.m. An hour before departure, the mechanic in charge of the plane noticed that the underside of the wings was covered with ice. He climbed up the ladder and put one knee on the wing to make sure the wings were free of ice. He found no ice on the front of the wing and checked the air intake of one of the engines, finding nothing abnormal. The personnel used over 1,000 liters of de-icing fluid to remove the ice from the aircraft. The mechanic consulted with the flight commander and told the personnel to also treat the underside of the wings with de-icing fluid because he saw ice there. However, no one checked to see if there was clear ice on the top of the wings. The mechanic reported to the commander that the clearing of the ice was complete. The commander thanked the mechanic and continued the pre-flight procedures. The plane taxied on the runway with the de-icing systems of the engines on and no malfunctions. However, several passengers later claimed that they saw ice sliding off the top of the wings as the plane took off. Despite this, the plane took off and headed for Stockholm. Shortly after takeoff, several pieces of overhanging ice hit the engines near the tail of both sides of the plane, damaging the blades of the first stage compressor. At that moment, a passenger on board, Scandinavian Holmberg, noticed that something was wrong. He first told the stewardess that the right engine was working intermittently. She tried to contact the crew, but to no avail. Then, Holmberg came running into the cockpit and asked if he could help the crew. The second officer handed him an emergency checklist and the commander asked him to start the auxiliary propulsion system, a small gas turbine, in the tail of the plane. Holmberg's advice and help proved invaluable, but was it enough to save the plane and the people on board? When the plane came out of the cloud cover at an altitude of 270 meters, the pilots realized that they did not have enough time to return to the airport. An emergency landing was imminent, and the commander gave the order to the crew members to prepare the passengers for the landing. North of the plane, there was a large field, but the commander realized that it was not reachable. He chose a much smaller space on the edge of the forest, in the direction of the flight, near the village of Gottröra in the Swedish province of Uppland. The plane was at an altitude of 420 meters when the commander reported to the air traffic controller in Stockholm, "We're going down." 7 seconds later, the plane crashed into the treetops and lost a huge chunk of the right wing. By that time, the landing gear had been released and the speed was down to 190 kilometers per hour. Moments later, the tail of the plane hit the ground and broke off. The plane continued to glide across the field at high speed, covering 110 meters. Its main landing gear left tracks on the field, and eventually, the plane lost its main and nose landing gear. The fuselage broke into 3 pieces, but there was no fire. Looking at the photos from the crash site where the plane was torn apart and its parts scattered all over the field, it is hard to believe that all 129 people on board survived. This is the result of the quick reaction of the flight attendants and the proper instructions they gave to the passengers. The flight attendants did not panic and promptly told the passengers to take the brace in time to avoid being killed. Almost all of the passengers, with the exception of 4, were able to exit the plane on their own. This crash has been dubbed a miracle. The plane, almost brand new, was damaged so badly that it was immediately written off. Everyone praised the actions of the crew. The landing was incredibly skillful, especially in such a fast-paced and dangerous situation. The commander confessed that few pilots have ever had to put their skills learned in practice to such an extent. He said he was proud of his crew, relieved that everyone survived, and he never went back to flying commercially. Share your opinions in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay updated.